Daniel Reed learned early how to live inside pauses. As a boy in Ohio, he watched chances come close and pass quietly, and by the time he reached 42, hesitation had become a habit so familiar it felt like safety. He now lived outside Portland, Oregon, in a tidy townhouse with neutral walls and a life that worked but did not stir. His job as a civil engineer paid well, his mornings were calm, his evenings orderly, yet something unnamed pressed against him each day, as if his heart were always leaning forward while his feet stayed still. That feeling always brought him back to one point in time, 11 years ago, when he met Emily Carter at a professional seminar in Seattle. She had been standing near the coffee table, laughing softly at something another attendee said, her laugh easy and unguarded, and Daniel noticed the way people leaned in when she spoke. Their first conversation was simple and brief, yet it left him strangely alert, as if his life had shifted a few degrees without warning. Emily was practical but warm, thoughtful but alive with quiet curiosity, and over the next 2 days they kept finding their way back to each other between meetings, talking about city design, childhood towns, books they loved, and the ways life had not turned out as planned. Daniel knew from the beginning that something important was unfolding, but knowing had never meant acting for him. Emily mentioned her recent divorce once, not with bitterness, just honesty, and Daniel told himself the timing was wrong, that staying quiet was respectful, that patience was wiser than boldness. After the seminar ended, he expected the feeling to fade, yet it deepened instead as emails turned into conversations into trust. When Emily later moved back to Vancouver, Canada, he told himself distance would make things clearer, assuming that clarity would mean letting go, but clarity never came. They spoke often, sometimes late into the night, sharing fears they never shared with anyone else, dreams half-spoken and sometimes unfinished, and Daniel carried the comfort of her voice like a secret he cared for but never opened. Years passed, marked by birthdays acknowledged through messages, promotions celebrated from afar, quiet confessions made safely through screens. Daniel dated occasionally, but every connection ended the same way, hollow and brief, while Emily remained constant, familiar, close but unreachable. He told himself he was being careful, being kind, being reasonable, yet beneath those words was the truth he avoided. He was afraid. Afraid of choosing and being wrong, afraid of wanting something more than he could hold, afraid that saying what he felt would change everything they had built. Over time, he sensed a shift in Emily's tone, subtle but unmistakable. Her replies shortened, her warmth grew measured, and where once she filled the silence with shared thoughts, now she left space. Daniel noticed it during an autumn evening as rain tapped softly against his windows and he reread one of her recent emails, polite and friendly but missing the closeness it once carried. The realization came quietly but firmly, time had not protected this bond, it had tested it, and his silence had been part of the damage. Sitting alone that night, Daniel understood that waiting no longer felt safe, it felt like loss. After that first evening when Emily and Jack shared an accidental brush of hands in the quiet coffee shop, a strange energy lingered between them, something neither could fully name. Days passed, and each found themselves thinking about the other more than they wanted to admit. Jack's calm confidence and gentle humor tugged at Emily's heart, yet her mind constantly reminded her of the walls she had built over the years, the hesitations that had always stopped her from stepping into the unknown. At work, Emily felt a constant distraction. Jack's texts appeared with such ease, casual invitations to lunch or coffee, and she found herself both thrilled and terrified by the idea of saying yes. Her friends noticed the change too, teasing her lightly, seeing her laughter more often, her eyes bright with a quiet excitement she hadn't felt in years. Jack, on the other hand, carried a silent storm of feelings. He watched Emily from across crowded rooms, noticing the way her hair caught the sunlight, the slight furrow of her brow when she was focused, the warmth in her smile that seemed to reach him even from a distance. Each time she laughed at his jokes or paused to linger in conversation, he felt his heartbeat quicken, aware that the usual careful distance he kept with people he cared for was evaporating. And then there were the small moments, subtle but powerful, the shared umbrella on a rainy evening when neither wanted to admit they were glad for the excuse, the way their shoulders brushed while reaching for the same book in the library, the exchange of glances that said more than either could speak aloud. Every encounter left both longing for more yet scared to cross the line that might make everything real. Emily wrestled with a deep internal conflict. She wanted connection, but the thought of vulnerability, of opening herself to someone else's heart, had always paralyzed her. Jack, sensing her hesitation, held back in his own way, not wanting to push too hard and risk losing the fragile closeness they had cultivated. One Saturday evening, Jack suggested a walk by the riverside, a casual invitation, but as they wandered under the dim glow of the city lights, the air between them thickened with unspoken emotions. They talked about dreams, regrets, and little things from childhood that shaped who they were, each revelation peeling back layers they rarely shared with anyone. Emily's voice trembled at times, Jack's eyes softened in response, and in those moments, the distance that had always existed seemed to collapse into a space only they occupied. The night air carried the scent of rain and city streets, mingling with the nervous excitement between them, and for the first time, Emily felt the possibility of courage stirring in her chest. Jack's hand hovered near hers as they paused on a quiet bridge, the city's reflection shimmering below, and Emily's pulse surged. The world felt suspended, every sound and movement exaggerated, yet nothing was spoken. That hesitation, the one that had governed her life for so long, felt like it could either protect her or imprison her forever. She noticed the way Jack's gaze lingered on her, the gentle tilt of his head, the warmth that radiated from his presence, and something inside her whispered that this was a moment that mattered, a crossroads she couldn't ignore. The tension built slowly, a gentle crescendo of longing, curiosity, and fear, each second stretching longer than it should, until Emily realized she had been standing at the edge of something she had spent a lifetime avoiding. And then, in a heartbeat that seemed both terrifying and exhilarating, Jack spoke softly, "I've wanted to tell you something for a long time, but I was afraid." Emily's breath caught, her chest tight with anticipation, and she felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. The words, though unspoken for years, carried a weight that neither had expected, binding them together in that quiet moment. Time seemed to slow as she searched his eyes for the courage to respond, the very hesitation she had carried for so long pressing against her chest, urging her to run, to retreat into safety. But there was something different this time, something that made her step closer instead of away. Her hand brushed against his, a fleeting touch that sent sparks of electricity through both of them, a simple act of bravery that felt monumental. I think I've been waiting for you to say that," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, and in that moment, the invisible walls between them began to crumble. They walked the rest of the riverside in silence, hearts pounding, every glance and accidental touch charged with a new intensity, each step carrying the weight of emotions long denied. Emily realized that the fear she had carried wasn't gone, but it had changed. It had become a companion to the thrill of finally taking a risk, of finally feeling alive in a way she had almost forgotten. Jack's steady presence beside her was both comforting and electrifying, a paradox she didn't want to resolve just yet. They talked about small things to avoid addressing the growing tension, laughing at trivial jokes, yet every brush of their hands and every shared look held more meaning than either dared to voice. That night, as they parted ways under the soft glow of streetlights, Emily felt an unfamiliar warmth in her chest, a mixture of hope, fear, and longing, knowing that the journey they had begun together was only starting. And even as she walked home, replaying every word, every glance, and every subtle touch, she felt the stirrings of courage, the kind that had eluded her for years, finally awakening, whispering that maybe, just maybe, taking the leap was worth everything she had feared. The night ended, but the emotions lingered, haunting and sweet, leaving both Emily and Jack in a state of anticipation, knowing that the next encounter could change everything, for better or worse, and neither was entirely prepared for the depth of what they were about to feel. The days after that riverside evening felt like a strange mix of excitement and tension for Emily and Jack. Every message, every shared glance at work carried the weight of the unspoken feelings growing between them, making ordinary moments feel charged with possibility. Emily found herself replaying the night over and over in her mind, the way his hand had almost, but not quite, brushed hers, the softness in his voice, the way his eyes seemed to hold everything he had been afraid to say, and she realized that her hesitation, the very thing that had defined her for so long, was starting to melt under the quiet pressure of desire and connection. Jack, meanwhile, wrestled with his own fears. He had built walls around his heart to avoid disappointment, but Emily's presence, her laughter, her thoughtfulness, and the subtle way she leaned in when he spoke, were chipping away at every carefully constructed boundary. They found themselves creating excuses to spend time together, whether it was volunteering to pick up coffee at the same time, lingering near each other after work, or suggesting casual walks in the park. Every encounter was a dance of closeness and restraint, a careful negotiation of how much to reveal without frightening the other. Emily felt a storm inside her, longing and fear, hope and uncertainty, each emotion twisting and turning, making her question everything she had known about herself. She wanted to be brave, to speak, to let Jack know that she felt the same pull, but the fear of rejection and of breaking the fragile balance they had created held her back. Jack, sensing her inner struggle, tried to be gentle, offering small gestures of care, a reassuring smile when she doubted herself, a light touch on the arm when he wanted to comfort her, subtle hints that he was there for her and only her. One rainy afternoon, they found themselves trapped together under the awning of a small bookstore, the drops falling around them and creating a quiet, intimate cocoon. Conversation flowed effortlessly, touching on dreams, regrets, and fears, each word revealing pieces of themselves they had shared with few others. Emily's heart raced as Jack spoke, and she realized that the fear she had clung to for so long had started to transform into something else, a cautious hope that maybe, finally, she could trust someone with her feelings. Jack, noticing the vulnerability in her eyes, wanted to close the gap between them, to reach out and bridge the distance that hesitation had created for years, but he paused, letting her set the pace, aware that rushing would undo the fragile connection they had nurtured. Over the next few weeks, their bond deepened in ways that neither had anticipated, small, tender moments, the brushing of hands while passing documents at work, shared laughter over silly jokes, quiet conversations that stretched into the night over text, accumulated into a feeling of inevitability, as if the universe had conspired to bring them together despite their fears. Emily began to notice herself smiling more, thinking less critically about the past, and daring to imagine a future that included Jack. Jack, in turn, found himself planning his days around her presence, thinking of ways to make her life easier, brighter, and more joyful, while still respecting the delicate line she needed to feel safe. Yet, despite the closeness, the hesitations remained. Emily struggled with nights spent wondering if she was moving too fast, if her heart was ready, and if opening herself completely was a risk worth taking. Jack's own doubts mirrored hers, as he questioned whether expressing his feelings fully would change everything they had carefully built. And then came the unexpected moment that shifted everything, a quiet Friday evening when they both ended up at the same art gallery opening, wandering through rooms of paintings and sculptures, surrounded by strangers but feeling entirely alone together. A piece caught Emily's eye, and as she spoke about it, Jack leaned in closer, their shoulders touching, the warmth between them undeniable. Her voice faltered, and he instinctively offered his hand, not wanting her to feel alone in the moment, and the simple act sent a jolt through both of them. Their eyes met, and in that instant, words were unnecessary. The longing they had held back for so long was suddenly too strong to ignore. Emily's heart raced as Jack gently brushed a strand of hair from her face, and though the gesture was innocent in its intent, the intensity of their shared emotion made it feel monumental. For the first time, Emily allowed herself to fully acknowledge the desire she had been denying, the attraction that had grown quietly and steadily, and the hope that maybe, she could finally be brave. Jack, sensing her acceptance, felt a surge of courage as well, realizing that this moment was the culmination of years of hesitation, the turning point where fear could either hold them back or push them forward. They left the gallery together, walking in silence along dimly lit streets, each step heavy with anticipation, the city around them fading into the background as they focused entirely on one another. Jack spoke softly, teasing, joking, yet every word carried an undercurrent of meaning, testing the waters, gauging Emily's readiness to cross the invisible line they had danced around for so long. Emily responded with a shy smile, her hand brushing his as they passed, the contact brief but enough to ignite a fire within them both. That night, as they parted ways outside her apartment building, the hesitation that had governed Emily's life for decades seemed to waver, replaced by the possibility of action, of finally stepping into the unknown, of finally embracing the very thing she had feared for so long. Jack lingered, reluctant to say goodbye, his eyes searching hers for permission, for a sign that she was ready to take the leap. Emily, her heart pounding, felt a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration, but in that moment, she made a decision. She would no longer let hesitation dictate her life, no longer let fear determine the boundaries of her heart. She whispered a quiet, almost imperceptible, "I want this. I want you," and Jack's face lit up with relief, warmth, and joy, the kind that comes from finally hearing the words one has been waiting to hear for years. The air seemed to hum around them, alive with potential, as though the city itself recognized the significance of the moment. They walked away, still hand in hand, hearts open and trembling, knowing that the next chapter would demand vulnerability, trust, and courage, but feeling ready, for the first time in a lifetime, to embrace the risk. And as Emily closed the door behind her that night, she felt the echo of a lifetime of hesitation slowly fading, replaced by the thrilling and terrifying knowledge that she had finally done the thing she had been afraid to do, and that the journey with Jack, full of love, longing, and possibilities, was only just beginning. The weeks that followed Emily and Jack's unspoken confession were a whirlwind of emotions, each day a delicate balance of excitement, discovery, and quiet vulnerability as they explored the new depth of their connection. Every morning, Emily woke with a flutter in her chest, eager to see Jack, to hear his voice, to feel the gentle warmth of his presence, while the memories of past hesitation lingered like a soft shadow, reminding her how long she had denied herself the chance to feel fully alive. Jack, too, carried a mix of anticipation and tenderness. Every glance, every smile from Emily was a revelation, a reminder that the risk of letting someone in could be the most rewarding choice one could make. They began to share more of themselves, slowly peeling back layers that had been guarded for years. Jack spoke of his childhood dreams of travel and artistry, the fears that had once kept him cautious, and the quiet hope that someone might understand him. Emily, in turn, opened up about the walls she had built after heartbreak, the times she had pushed people away out of fear, and the longing she had buried under years of hesitation. Their conversations, often long into the night, carried a natural rhythm, punctuated by laughter, lingering silences, and moments of gentle reassurance, each one reinforcing the fragile trust they were nurturing. They explored the city together in ways that made the mundane feel magical, a quiet brunch in a sunlit cafe, a stroll through the botanical gardens where sunlight dappled the path, a spontaneous detour into a small bookstore that smelled of old paper and possibility. Every shared experience deepened their bond, and the chemistry between them, though never forced, pulsed with a quiet intensity that neither could ignore. Emily found herself noticing the little things about Jack, the way he crinkled his eyes when he smiled, the thoughtful pauses before he spoke, the careful way he listened, and each detail made her heart swell with a mixture of admiration, affection, and desire. Jack, meanwhile, was captivated by Emily's warmth, her humor, the spark of curiosity in her eyes, and the gentle way she approached the world, seeing beauty even in the ordinary. Yet, the journey was not without its challenges. Old fears occasionally resurfaced, and moments of doubt crept in when Emily wondered if she was moving too fast or Jack questioned whether he could live up to the quiet devotion she deserved. But instead of pulling away, they learned to confront these fears together, using honest conversations, patience, and understanding as bridges over the gaps hesitation had once created. One crisp autumn evening, they found themselves atop a small hill overlooking the city, the skyline shimmering under the setting sun, the air cool but filled with an electric tension that made Emily's heart race. Jack reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers with a confidence that was both reassuring and intoxicating. They spoke of dreams, of hopes, of what it meant to finally let go of fear and embrace possibility, and Emily realized that the hesitation she had carried for decades was no longer a chain but a stepping stone to the life she had longed for. Jack's gaze softened, and he whispered words that made her breath catch, expressing his admiration, his longing, and his commitment, all without demanding anything but her presence. Emily, her chest tight with emotion, felt the courage she had been cultivating for years finally bloom into action. She leaned into Jack, resting her head on his shoulder, and in that simple act, both confessed what neither could fully say aloud, that they had found in each other a safe harbor, a shared courage, and a love that was patient, tender, and real. The weeks turned into months, and with each passing day, their bond deepened, anchored by trust, laughter, and a mutual understanding that vulnerability was not weakness but the most profound form of strength. They celebrated small victories together, supported each other through quiet moments of insecurity, and found joy in the simple, everyday rituals that made life richer: morning coffee shared on the balcony, spontaneous evening walks, quiet evenings reading side by side, and the unspoken comfort of knowing the other was there. Emily noticed the subtle changes within herself. She moved with more confidence, laughed more freely, and approached life with a newfound openness, all sparked by the courage to step into what she had once feared. Jack, too, experienced transformation. His heart, once guarded, was now alive with tenderness and gratitude, and he learned the beauty of patience, of listening, and of loving without reservation. They discovered that love, when allowed to grow slowly and carefully, could heal old wounds, spark new dreams, and turn hesitation into a catalyst for growth. One rainy afternoon, as they shared an umbrella walking through quiet streets lined with golden leaves, Emily felt an overwhelming surge of emotion and whispered to Jack, "I'm glad I didn't let fear stop me." Jack smiled, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face, and said softly, "Neither did I. And now, we can finally be everything we've hoped for." The rain fell around them, but inside, they were in a world of their own making, a space where fear no longer dictated their choices and love, in its quiet, mature, and enduring form, guided every step. That night, as they sat by the fireplace in Emily's apartment, talking, laughing, and sharing memories of the journey that had brought them together, both realized that the lifetime of hesitation, the fears, the doubts, and the quiet longing had all led to this moment of clarity and fulfillment. It was not a story of instant perfection but of slow, meaningful growth, of courage discovered in small, deliberate steps, and of the transformative power of connection. And as the night deepened, they held each other, feeling the warmth and certainty that only comes when hearts are finally aligned, knowing that the decision to act despite fear had not only brought them together but had created a love that would endure, gentle yet profound, passionate yet tender, the kind of love that could be felt in every glance, every touch, and every whispered word. In the quiet aftermath of their journey, Emily reflected on the lessons she had learned, that hesitation is natural, that fear is not a prison but a signal to move carefully, and that the most extraordinary moments in life often come after one dares to face what scares them most. Jack, feeling the same deep sense of gratitude, realized that love could not be rushed, forced, or controlled. It needed space, patience, and trust, and that by honoring both their vulnerabilities, they had created something rare and enduring. Their story, once defined by fear and what-ifs, was now written in moments of courage, tenderness, and shared joy, a testament to the beauty of taking risks and embracing life with an open heart. And as they drifted to sleep that night, side by side, hands intertwined, hearts full, both knew that this was only the beginning of a lifetime of shared experiences, of challenges met together, of laughter, of longing fulfilled, and of the quiet, steadfast love that comes when one finally does the thing they were most afraid of, and finds that it was worth every ounce of fear they had felt before.